Meditation is so good for you. And isn't that funny that it changes your brain? I mean, it makes sense because form follows consciousness. So if your consciousness, begins to change and expand, the form is always going to change to that consciousness. And what's even funnier is, what I think is funny, is that we continue to want to push God into form, So when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a priest, but I didn't have the right body parts, I had a physical disability to be a priest. It was the vagina that got in the way. And so I thought, well, if I can't be a priest, I'll be an actress. That's somebody who stands on stage and speaks the truth, So I became an actress for a long time, and I enjoyed it until one day I was laying on the floor and filming Dexter. I was murdered. There was blood all over the place, and I was looking up and I was thinking, I think I'm supposed to be doing something different here, So today I get to be the priester bunny. I stole that from my priest when I was a little kid. He actually would get up on the stage on Easter and he'd say, "I'm the priester bunny." And one time he said to us, "I'm not allowed to do that anymore. The bishop has told me I can't do it." And at the end of the sermon, he would sneak and put it on. He'd be like, "I'm the priester bunny." And I was like, I want to do that. I want to be the priester bunny. So by golly, you can make your dreams come true. So on Easter, we're talking about the bunny, the basket, the painted eggs. These are the things that we call Easter, right? But this has nothing to do with the resurrection story. I know, I got to take this off. You're going to be distracted. It has nothing to do with the resurrection story, right? This is the story that came before the resurrection story is all about these symbols, these pagan symbols, which was a whole other religion. So we can ask ourselves, what came first, the bunny or the Bible, or the crucifixion or the egg? And we might want to consider, how we are all woven together in this amazing tapestry, and what traditions we carry on, and why we carry them on, Because we don't want to go mindlessly into our lives. We want to bring things up to the light and ask, is this still serving us? So the pagan idea of Easter was based on a goddess called Eostre. And Eostre was supposed to be this beautiful divinity that came at springtime. And she was about, life and joy. So when the Christian ministries came to convert these pagan, countrysides, it was really easy just to take that, change the name, and turn it into a new story, so that they got to hold on to their symbols, but were transformed. And it happens all over the place, actually. So the pagans had a religion, but most of the time when we're converting someone, we might call them heathens, which we could say they had no religion, so it was fine, we just gave them one. But they weren't actually heathens, they were pagans. Not that it's bad to be a heathen either, I suppose. I've never been one, but you could be here and be a heathen if you like. So the bunny, again, was a pagan symbol, and the bunny was about fertility. That's what it was about. It was about fertility, right? And so modern day, we see Hugh Hefner made a ton of money on that with the Playboy Bunny, franchise. And it still holds that energy of being a fertile symbol. That's where that came from. The egg came from a pagan idea of rebirth, the idea that something was going to come beyond this little shell, that something miraculous was going to spring from this. And the Easter egg hunt is actually a Babylonian legend that says when Ishtar came down, she would come to Euphrates River in her yearly rebirth, and she would break out of an egg. This was the story, that she would break out of an egg, and if you celebrated this particular holiday and you saw her break out of the egg, you were given a special blessing. And so that is how we came to have Easter egg hunts today. I think these things are really fascinating, to figure out why do we do these things? So again, the Roman ministries came over and they transformed these pagans, and they figured that they would let them hold on to their symbols so that it would make it an easier transition for them. Now, unearthing these ideas for us now can sometimes feel very rattling. We could go, what do you mean? Don't take my Easter. Don't give it to somebody else. I don't want to muddy my Easter with those damn pagans. I don't want to mingle I want it to be mine and only mine. And that's where we get into problems, Instead, we could go, oh, look what you brought to the party. Oh, and look what you brought to the party. and I don't have to own it and stamp it as mine, piss on my territory, as you say. Maybe you don't say that, maybe I just say that. But we do this not only in religion, we do it all the time. We do it in science, we do it in music. We want to say this is mine and it's nobody else's. So as an example, in technology, remember when there was the beeper? We had the beeper and we're like, the beeper is so awesome. It came from the phone, but now it was the beeper, and we didn't have to wait at home for our agent or our boss to call us or whatever. We could just go out and have freedom and walk around the world and be like, I got my beeper on me. If someone needs me, I'm important. I got to go make a phone call. I got to go find a phone booth. Remember a phone booth? I got to go find a phone booth, to make my call and figure out, how I'm going to be called on. And then we love the beeper. And then someone said, hey, we're introducing the cell phone. And we're like, what, the cell phone? Yeah, the cell phone. You put it on your hip just like your beeper. And how? Where do you plug into? No cords. Really? That's not going to work. That's not going to work. I don't get it. I like the beeper. I'm sticking with the beeper. Well, everybody's getting the cell phone. Really? I don't know. I'm not going with it. This thing works for me, right? All right, I'll try out the cell phone. We're on the cell phone for a week, and we're like, oh, my God, who knew? Who uses the beeper? That guy over there, he's still on the beeper. Get with it! Let me call you and tell you got to get the cell phone, So we immediately amputate ourselves from our roots and then call it bad. This is what we keep doing, We amputate and we call it bad. Heathens, pagans, whatever. It was people honoring God. That's what it was. And for the beeper, it was people who wanted to connect with each other. And we're just finding more and more wonderful ways of doing that. But we don't have to demonize it. We don't have to separate it. We can honor it. What would happen if we honored our roots, If we really honored all paths to God. So I think that's funny about the beeper, because I had a beeper and I was all about it. We have this superiority function, this forgetfulness that happens all the time. This past week, this is kind of funny, I was walking by my daughter's bedroom, and she was playing an Elvis song, I Can't Help Falling in Love with You. And I was like, oh my gosh, an Elvis song, she's playing this Elvis song. So I peeked in the door and I was like, hey, so you're playing Elvis? And she's like, no. And I was like, what do you mean no? She's like, it's not Elvis, Mom, it's 21 Pilots. And I was like, no, it's Elvis. And she's like, no, it's not. I'm like, I'll bet you $1, because I'm into betting, that it's Elvis. And she's like, I'll bet you $1,000. I'm like, I'll bet you $1 billion that it is Elvis. And we went to the Google gods and typed it in, and I am now officially a billionaire, so thank you. So this is what we do, though. We take something, and sharing is fine, but honoring the roots of where it came from, I think that's really something that we're not so good at. Because we feel like if we give credit to our roots that we don't get to authorize it. But everything is everything, and everything is love. And we really are more or less weaving a basket or a tapestry than actually painting something by ourselves. We actually are so much better together. So now listen, when we convert things, and in the past when we converted things, it wasn't always easy. It wasn't rainbow and flowers for those pagans. If they didn't want to get the cell phone, it was like, okay, I'm just going to have to kill you, which there was a lot of blood, shed in the name of God. So, okay, that's the story. That's also our roots, And we can look back and say, I can't believe those people, shedding blood in the name of God. Well, some things haven't changed, right? This is still the same old story. And wouldn't that be, if we had to change something, wouldn't that be something that we wouldn't invest in changing? So, anyhow, don't get me started on that one. Terrible and beautiful things will happen. This is the world. Terrible and beautiful things will happen here. Be not afraid. And that's the idea in this community. Just love more and fear less. That's our byline. Love more and fear less. If we had, we don't have to date a mission statement, but we could boil it down just to that. Love more, fear less, And if we followed that, what would happen? Who would we be? How would we show up? So, because holding on to the story that it's ours and our authorship is just going to cause a lot of pain. The truth is, who cares where it came from? I don't care if it's a beeper or a cell phone. I don't care if it's Elvis or the 21 Pilots. You know what I care about? The experience I have when I cross my daughter's path and she's singing a song. That's what I care about. That's what I care about. That's what you care about. We care about the content of it. We don't really want to get attached to the symbols. And all the wars have been started over us getting attached to the symbols. And it's like, why are you fighting for this when you could have this? Can we just really put the value where the value needs to be on the content? The content is love. Under all this mad rambling of the ego, all of this trying to get, underneath that is just the fear. It's just a child afraid. Can we love them in their fear? This is what Jesus did. Jesus was a great example of this. We want to ask, when we're moving into something, does this elevate me or does this stifle me? And that's all we have to ask. Does this make me feel uplifted or does it stifle me? And you might say, well, is everything meant to elevate you? Is that all? You're just going to be on a happy trip? Yeah, actually, yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm into. Everything should elevate me. Will everything elevate me? No. Are you going to walk to your crucifixion one day? Yeah, absolutely. Will that elevate you? No. Will it do something for you? Yeah, it will strengthen my conviction in the truth, okay? We're all going to have crucifixions, and as we walk to them fearlessly, it will strengthen our conviction in the truth that nothing real can be threatened, and nothing unreal can die. Nothing unreal exists. So herein lies the peace of God. Nothing real can be threatened. So if my daughter calls it 21 Pilots or Elvis, it doesn't threaten the music. If we connect through beeper or cell phone, it doesn't threaten our desire for connection. That's what we want to look at. If our body's threatened, it doesn't have to take away the love that springs forth from us. And Jesus was an example of that. He was an example of that, not an exception. And the example that he showed us was defenselessness, to come defenseless to the story. In our own experiences, we're going to have our mini crucifixions. People, places, and things are going to want to hang us up and string us out. We want to get caught up on it and really be the victim there and say, this is not for me. And that right there, right where that person is bothering you, is exactly where your consciousness can expand. That right there, if you show up to that, that's where you're going to have an expansion. So the ideal is to love no matter what. And if we love no matter what, that contains no fear. True love contains no fear. You can either have love or fear. You can't have them both, and they don't fit in the same shoes. So if you really want to activate love, it has to be a fearless love. Is that easy? No. It's not always easy. You might come through a conversation with your knees shaking, but as long as you start to move in the direction of your love, the universe will swell to support you because it sees your conviction, it sees your intention, and it will rise to meet that intention and take the form most supportive of that idea. That's just the truth and the whole truth. Amen, right? Now, does that mean that you should just show up to every single abusive relationship and just say, I'm going to love here no matter what? No. The idea in defenselessness also requires honesty. If I'm going around trying to hug a porcupine telling me that it's a bunny, then eventually I'm going to go, wait a minute. I keep getting hurt by this because I want you to be a bunny and you're not a bunny, you're a porcupine. You told me you were a porcupine. I didn't believe you the first time. I think if I love you enough, I'll turn you into a bunny, Well, I'm not a bunny, I'm a porcupine. I know, but I think I can make this work. Do not cuddle the porcupine. Not that the porcupine's bad. The porcupine does what the porcupine needs to do, and it gives us great medicine. It shows us about boundaries. It shows us about strength, but it's not a bunny. So to be defenseless means to really come without my preconceptions of who you are, to let me be truthful with who you are and who I am so that we can have an honest conversation. And if we show each other our truths, then we have the opportunity to move forward in grace and serenity, like Jesus was showing us as we walk to the crucifixion. So defenselessness also requires us that we keep our temple clean. And this temple lives within us, A lot of us want to claim confusion or congestion or chaos, but we each are a sanctuary for God's love. This church first started with the idea that we are a sanctuary, and we morphed and changed, I want to tell you about our roots in the same way I want to tell you about the roots of Christianity and paganism. Charlene Vickery sat here with me, and we visioned on a community called Community Sanctuary. And then things morphed and changed, and sanctuary no longer worked for us. And I started thinking, sanctuary sounds like a place where people go to hide. I don't want that, right? So I want a place where people can just speak easy, you know? So things begin to morph and change. I keep taking my glasses on and off because I'm really vain. And I'm also like that. I'm not blind. I'm really blind. I'm totally blind. So sad. I'm completely blind. My form has changed. Our form will change. You know what I mean? That's okay. So, the idea of the temple. So the temple lives within us. Do you know where the temple is?
Your soul.
Your soul, yeah. And specifically, anybody know where their temple is? Billy Schaub, yes, right there. We have 2 temples to show us the direction of the temple that we need to keep clean, and that's our mind. Our mind is an altar for God. We can do all the acts, we can show up early, we can dress up nice, but if we don't keep our mind clean of judgment and hatred and fear, the temple's congested. So don't entertain, guests that you don't want in the temple. This is holy ground, okay? And don't pray prayers in the temple of worry and fear. That's not going to support you in moving forward in a defenseless way. If you keep running the script of fear and judgment and brokenness and lack and limitation in your temple, you pray to a broken God, you're going to get a broken life. That's just the mathematics. So you get to be large and in charge in regards to what goes on in the temple, okay? What goes on in your mind. And you know what? We do this through affirmations. That's a really simple beginning step. To affirm a new thought, to affirm something that's actually working for you. And sometimes this mad ramble will be so strong, it'll be hard to get off the, hamster wheel to nowhere. It'll be running this racket. You'll know if you're in the shower and there's a lot of company in the shower with you, and you go, yeah, you said this and I said that and you're reliving this bullshit. It's like, oh, my temple needs some cleaning. I'm running this mad ramble. I could be using my temple for something better. Let me affirm a new thought. Let me really affirm it until I believe it. So the fear is that when we let go of defenses, that we will be harmed, that danger will come. That's the fear. That's the song of the ego. But when we let go of defenses, look at Mother Mary, look at Jesus, look at Buddha. They all come like this. They're the way showers, Look at, he's knocking on the door. Hey, he's not bearing a gun. He's got a cane, He's got a lamb, So I'm not threatening at all, but just coming open. I said, this is the vegan Jesus and this is the coming out of the closet Jesus. So I'm going to hell already. So so to come defenseless, then you're saying nothing's against me, everything is for me, and I can walk through this, And when I walk through this, what will show up is courage, strength, and wisdom. What will show up is God. You want to sing that? We got some time for you to sing it. So in God, there's nothing to fear. There's only greater good to be revealed. And we want to kind of spend as little time as possible with, wrestling with the shadow puppets on the wall. Because that's what we're prone to do. That's the old script. So how do you show up this way? Knowing that every moment is an opportunity for constriction or compassion. For stifling or for creativity. Because, you get to make that choice. And it's not always going to be easy. We're not always going to feel worthy of the adventure or the adversity. The adversity or the adventure is going to knock on our door, and we're going to want to step backwards and say, I'm not ready, So it's interesting that Jesus had this adversity before him, and he knew about it, right? Because he's a guy who could walk on water. Like, he could have gotten out of this gig if he wanted to, I have a feeling. But he showed up to it, And he just kept taking one next step, and he didn't fight it, and he didn't blame, and he didn't shame, and he didn't guilt. He activated forgiveness, and instead of forgiving them, they know not what they do. And some days you're going to come like that. You might even fall and falter on your journey to your next great chapter. But that's okay. He fell and faltered and he still got back up. Some days you're going to come with no gas in the tank and $1 in your bank account. And you're going to be called. And you're going to want to stay at home in fetal position on the bathroom floor. But that exactly right there is when you show up to that, that's where your consciousness expands. So I have this story that came up recently. My sister texted me and she said, oh, is that you on that movie with Bette Midler, Scenes from a Mall? And I was like an extra in the background. I was like, how did you see me in that? And I started laughing. I was totally pregnant at the time, and I had this stupid costume on. I was like, yes, that was me. It was like 20 years earlier. And we laughed, and I hung up the phone, and then I started crying. And I started crying because at the time, I was such an unworthy warrior, you know. At the time, I was pregnant, and I wasn't married, and I was having this career as an actress, and I had no idea what was in store for me. You know, I had no real support, and I was, you know, kicking my ass to make enough money to, I'm sorry, I'm crying. I can't believe I'm crying. I cry. I don't have to apologize for it. I said I wouldn't, and I just apologized. I'm crying. So I was kicking my butt to make enough money to get my insurance, and I missed it by $100. You know, I had to make $4,000. I missed it by $100. And I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do. And my sister said, you should go to Medicaid and apply for Medicaid. So I went to Medicaid, and all the stories I heard about Medicaid was like, you're not going to be able to have the birth that you want. You're not going to be able to have a home birth. You're going to have to get all kinds of tests. They're going to use you as a guinea pig. I mean, there were so many stories around it. I was talking to my friend Jean the other day, and I said, you know what was the truth, though? That wasn't the truth at all. Like, I walked in, and I got to have my birth the way I wanted to have it, and Medicaid took care of me, and I went to Screen Actors Guild, and I said, I have these extra bills. I was so frail at the time, but I just kept taking the next right step. And I didn't know where to go, but I knew that if I kept taking the next right step, the world would respond to me. And I walked into the office and I said, you know what? I'm in a situation. I don't have the money, and I didn't make my insurance. And they were like, don't worry about it. We're going to pay for everything. You're a perfect candidate for us. I mean, that's what the world has to offer when we show up. Even when our knees are shaking, because we're going to have to show up when our knees are shaking. You know, you're going to come to that moment, and that is the moment I beg you not to go back to fetal position. You know, that is the moment that you get to rise, and we all get to rise. And when we get to rise from that, I get to stand here in front of you today and say, everything worked out. You know, everything worked out for me. My son, Owen, had a nice, healthy birth. There's that funny poem, you know, about footprints in the sand. You know, when the guy's walking in life and he sees the 2 sets of footprints in the sand. And he says, God, you know, I came to that dark night of the soul, and now there's only 1 footprint in the sand. And what happened? And God says, well, I got tired. I jumped on your back. That's not the story. At least I hope it wasn't. That's when God lifts you. That's when God lifts you. So you're going to have these moments of great strength in times, you know, when you're least likely to show up. And that right there is when you're going to have your consciousness expand, because God is with you. You have everything necessary for your next right step. And the only way of really knowing that is taking the next right step. Nobody can take that step for you. Only you can do that for yourself. And once you consent to the journey, 1,000 hands will suddenly appear to support you. You know, I consented to this journey. And oh my God, I mean, I'm overwhelmed with things that show up at my door every day. Dawn Sprawn brought me a ton of coffee. My PR lady in the back gave me a whole bunch of books. You know, Carol came and made name tags for us. I mean, I'm getting things I didn't even know to ask for. What am I doing? I'm just taking the next right step. That's all you need to do is take the next right step. And it might be a baby step. And you might fall and falter, but what do we do when we fall and falter? Were you listening last week? Oops-a-daisy, thank you very much. Just like a baby, oops-a-daisy, I fell down. What the big deal? I just totally wanted to curse there, and I did, thank you very much. So let the hard times come if they will, because you know what? The hard times are a tenderization of the spirit. That's what I call them. That's the tenderization of the spirit that gets to prove to us how very brave and vital we all are. How will we know our strength if we never get our feet put to the fire? How will we know that? We'll only be able to read it in a book. That's not going to be very helpful. We'll never trust it. But to know that you walked through things, man, I have walked through so many things. I stood in a room one time and said I'm an alcoholic. The words hardly even got to come out of my mouth. I was like, oh, and the whole room turned on me. They're like, just say it, just say it. My God, you know, I had things I went through, but we all have things that we go through. We rise from them with the prize, and the prize is that we bring them back to the community and we get to go, look, You know, I got through this, you'll get through this, I know the way out. There's so many ways out. Once we get gentle with God and say, there has to be another way, I'm done with struggling and doing it my way, there has to be another way, that's when we get lifted and a door appears where we thought there was a wall, you know? So, Helen Keller is an amazing way shower as well. So I thought I'd toss her in the stories today. And she, you know, she was blind and deaf, and she didn't stop at that, you know? She got frustrated with it. She got really frustrated with it, and then she settled down, and she got defenseless with it. And then she went to her temple and cleared the temple and said, okay, how am I going to work with this? You know, she's known for saying, you know, I'm just one person, and I can't do everything. But I won't let the fact that I can't do everything stop me from doing the one thing that I can do. And in doing the one thing that she could do, she made a vast improvement for people who have disabilities. Made a huge improvement for that. It's amazing. You know, what we think the beeper and the phone is amazing, this woman created a whole new way of communicating with people who were on the outside. That's holy territory. I mean, and she's not special, and Jesus is not special. This and greater things shall you do. They are the great example. And if we don't follow their lead, then we dishonor their journey. Do you get that? If we don't follow their lead, we dishonor their journey. If we say, no, it's just for them, they know where to go and what to do and what to say, but for me, I'm stuck here in fetal position on the bathroom floor, there's no way out for me. Come on. That's just not the story for us today. Imagine what is possible. So Jesus rose as an example. And you too can rise. We're capable of immeasurable heights. This and greater things will you do, because you were designed to rise. There is something within you that's calling you even now as we speak. The thing you've been shoving underneath the carpet, the thing you've been like even frightened to say in public. You know, that's the elixir that's calling you to your adventure. It might seem like an adversity, but it's actually your greatest yet to be. And if we stay small and stagnant and in fear, we're never going to get to rise to that. So we have to allow ourselves to move past it. And we don't have to go alone. You can ask anybody in this room, hey, I got to make this phone call. Could I practice on you? Could you hold me in prayer? Hey, I got to go have this interview, you know? Could you just, you know, put it in community? And hey, I need a job, you know? I don't know where to go. Hey, does anybody know where I might find a job? So together, we weave together this possibility of greater good for us, like a safety net for God. You know, we're not going to let anybody drop in our community. So that's the truth and the whole truth today. I told you more than I should have. But we're going to take some time now to share in conversation. So what we do is just raise your hand if you want to share something.